The Crimson Summit was meant to be a moment of peace, a meeting of minds from across the stars, and for Earth, a chance to finally prove its place in the galaxy. Elena Rourke, Earth's first official ambassador to the Galactic Council, stepped off the silver ramp of the Terran flagship Resolute Dawn with her chin high and her dark eyes sharp. She wore no armor, only a sleek, dark blue diplomatic suit with a single pin of Earth's united emblem, a circle of stars around the image of a tree rooted in stone. The station of Valaxis Prime hummed with the voices of dozens of species, each more strange and beautiful than the last. Spires of metal curved through zero-gravity halls, glowing with soft blue lights, and above them floated a glass dome, revealing the stars and a giant red gas giant swirling beyond. Elena was calm, but inside, her thoughts raced. This summit had been planned for years, and Earth had fought hard to be included. Not long ago, humans were seen as primitives by older empires like the Zixari and Krasari. But Earth had advanced too quickly for some, and Elena knew not every attendee welcomed her with open arms. She greeted each delegate with grace, her voice steady, her movements controlled, but behind every smile was a silent scan from the AI assistant hidden in her earpiece. Threat levels, facial cues, vocal tones all logged. The opening ceremony was brief, and then the speeches began. One by one, representatives from the dozen core civilizations took the podium. Some spoke in holographic translations, some in song or scent, but all spoke of unity. When Elena's turn came, the chamber grew quiet. She stood beneath the high beams of the central hall, lights casting a halo around her. "People of the stars," she began, her voice echoing through the chamber, "Earth comes not with weapons, but with words. We know pain. We know war. But we have chosen peace. Let us share what we've learned and learn what you've shared." Her speech was short, powerful, and moving. Some delegates nodded. Others sat still as statues. Just as she ended with, "Together, we go farther," a piercing shriek cut through the chamber. A second later, a flash of light burst near the front row. A blue shard of plasma screamed across the room and struck Elena in the chest. She staggered, her eyes wide, and collapsed to the floor without a sound. Screams erupted, chairs clattered, security drones surged forward, but it was too late. Blood pooled beneath her as her AI tried to stabilize her vitals, but even advanced nanotech couldn't stop the damage. The plasma shard had torn through her heart. The assassin had vanished, no trace, no heat signature, no trail. The Zixari guards claimed the attacker used cloaking tech from a rogue sector, but no one believed it. Earth's delegation stood in silent shock. Some dropped to their knees. One young officer, Commander Soren Thane, clenched his fists so hard his gloves tore. He stared at Elena's body as if willing her to rise again. The council called for calm. The Zixari Prime Speaker declared it a tragedy and offered vague condolences. There was no formal investigation, no real justice, just words and silence. Earth's delegation requested to leave immediately. No threats, no anger, only cold, unreadable faces. As Resolute Dawn undocked from Valaxis Prime, the ship's engines lit up like a comet against the void, pulling away without ceremony. Inside the control room, Soren Thane stood at the glass window, watching the stars stretch before him. Behind him, the command AI whispered the latest analysis, multiple data spikes before the attack, communication signals between certain Zixari and Krasari ships, anomalies in security coverage, none of it conclusive, but none of it innocent. Soren didn't speak. He didn't need to. The look in his eyes said everything. Something had changed. Earth had sent an olive branch and received a dagger. Elena Rourke had been more than a diplomat, she had been a symbol of humanity's hope. Her murder was not just an attack on Earth, but on the very idea of peace. And as the ship accelerated into the dark, every member of the Terran delegation knew one truth. The galaxy had drawn first blood. Earth would remember. Earth would prepare. And Earth would answer. The stars above Earth were calm, but the planet below was not. Days after Ambassador Elena Rourke's murder at the Crimson Summit, a heavy silence fell over every Terran city, spaceport, and outpost. No speeches, No threats, no messages to the Galactic Council, just silence. At United Terran Command, buried deep beneath the Andes Mountains, leaders met behind sealed walls. Holograms of military officials, scientists, intelligence heads, and representatives from Earth's colonies hovered above the round steel table. At its center stood Commander Soren Thane, no longer a quiet officer, but now the sharp edge of Earth's will. His voice was low, steady, and without emotion as he explained the findings. The plasma shard that killed Elena had come from Zixari black market tech, the same kind used by covert strike teams in centuries-old conflicts. Communications before the assassination pointed to secret meetings between powerful empires who once ruled the galaxy unchecked until Earth rose too fast, too strong, and too united. There was no doubt in Soren's mind. The murder was a message. Earth had not been welcomed to the table, it had been warned to stay in its place. But Earth had no intention of staying quiet forever. A single command was given: initiate Protocol Scorchglass. Across Earth's systems, civilian fleets were recalled, deep space colonies shut down external links, and trade stations powered down without explanation. The Terran economy turned inward, and AI defense systems activated dormant protocols. Earth's presence in the galaxy vanished like a shadow slipping behind a door. Other species noticed, of course. The markets trembled. Merchant guilds panicked. Governments sent polite messages, curious probes, even friendly ships, but none received answers. Earth said nothing. It simply vanished. In the outer colonies, workers and citizens were quietly evacuated, replaced by black-armored personnel and stealth drones. Satellites with strange new designs orbited forgotten moons. Giant fusion engines were tested in silence. Earth was not hiding, it was changing. Meanwhile, whispers began to spread. On the frozen world of Harkus V, a Zixari listening post was found burned to the ground. No signs of battle, no bodies, just black ash and a strange marking scorched into the ice, the Terran emblem. In the trade hub of Saravas, 3 Krizari cargo freighters vanished from orbit, their tracking systems wiped clean. A week later, a lone drone arrived carrying a message for their government: 3 for 1. Keep counting. The galaxy watched and waited. The Galactic Council sent a request for dialogue. Earth ignored it. Reporters tried to dig up answers, but found only locked channels and empty ports. Some species believed Earth had gone into mourning, others feared it was building something terrifying. Both were right. Back under the Andes, Soren Thane watched red dots on a map: enemy outposts, political targets, strategic weak points. The 100 Blades, Earth's most secretive elite strike force, was already moving through the dark. They operated without sound, without trace, leaving only ruins and fear behind. They didn't kill civilians. They didn't seek war. They delivered only precision strikes against those tied to the plot that killed Elena. In space, silence was the greatest weapon. No one could predict where Earth would strike next. A mining world near Zixari territory lost its orbital defenses in 6 seconds. A military base on a moon went dark before the soldiers even knew they were under attack. Still, Earth said nothing. And that silence grew louder. Alien news networks ran constant updates, calling it the Terran disappearance. Former allies grew nervous. Rivals became paranoid. But Earth did not speak, because it no longer needed to. Its actions spoke louder. Every attack left behind the same message carved or burned into metal, stone, or ice, we remember. Back at command, Soren stood before a wall of screens showing intercepted messages, fleet movements, and political shifts. Earth's silence had become a strategy. It had created fear, and fear was now breaking old alliances. Some species began quietly reaching out, offering help, offering truth. They feared they would be next. Soren didn't answer them either. Not yet. Every move Earth made was calculated. This was not a war of noise. It was a storm waiting to break. The silence of the Terrans was not weakness. It was the sound before thunder. And soon, the galaxy would hear the roar. They were a myth to most of the galaxy, a rumor whispered in the cold void between stars. But now the name 100 Blades struck fear into even the most hardened admirals and high-ranking officials. No one had seen their faces, no one had recorded their voices, but their work spoke louder than any threat. They moved like shadows, invisible to scans and sensors, their ships cloaked in technology that Earth had never shared. They did not declare war, did not demand surrender, yet everywhere they went, something broke. Power stations flickered out, defense satellites fell from orbit, and secret weapons depots were found empty or turned to glass. The Zixari Concord, once proud and ancient, had started losing control over its border worlds. In one night, 7 of their forward bases reported system-wide shutdowns, followed by total silence. When investigation crews arrived, they found the same eerie pattern: no blood, no bodies, just scorch marks in impossible shapes and a small metal shard left behind, engraved with the emblem of Earth and a number. The numbers were never the same. One said 16. Another said 22. The meaning was unclear, but it made the Zixari nervous, and fear crept into their command halls like smoke. On the gas giant orbiting the ruins of Nixar colony, a Krasari dreadnought went dark while refueling. Its crew had no time to send a distress call. What little data was recovered showed only brief flashes: black armored figures moving like wind through narrow halls, cutting power and disabling systems with surgical precision. One moment, the ship was full of activity. The next, only silence. The dreadnought was found a day later, floating without power, every weapon removed, every control console wiped clean. In the captain's chair, someone had left a holochip playing a recording of Elena Rourke's speech, her last words echoing through the ruined command deck: "Together, we go farther." The galaxy started to understand. The 100 Blades were not just soldiers, they were symbols. They were revenge made real. Built in secret, trained in silence, and unleashed only when the line had been crossed, they were the sword Earth had hidden behind its smile. Now the sword had been drawn. Civilizations that had once laughed at Earth's rapid rise began shutting down border stations, locking down their fleets, and canceling diplomatic missions. But fear alone could not stop the Blades. A weapons lab hidden under the desert crust of Trelvac 4 exploded from within, not from bombs, but from carefully hacked fusion cores. A meeting between Zixari warlords was interrupted by a complete power blackout, during which all 10 of them disappeared without a sound. A pirate syndicate that had bragged of aiding in the assassination of Ambassador Rourke vanished overnight, their space station found later cold, dark, and empty, with the number 31 painted across its docking bay in Terran black ink. Panic began to spread in the council chambers of the great powers. Old alliances cracked. Accusations flew like sparks. Some claimed Earth had gone mad. Others said the Blades were AI, or worse, something inhuman. But those who had studied Earth more closely began to see the pattern. The Blades did not strike random targets. Each mission was connected to the murder, tied by data, money, or involvement in the Crimson Summit's betrayal. And one by one, those responsible were vanishing. Back on Earth, Soren Thane watched the reports with a quiet intensity. He said little during briefings, only nodding once as updates came in: mission complete, facility neutralized, asset extracted. The 100 Blades did not seek glory. They existed for one purpose: balance. They were Earth's answer to treachery. Soren knew they could not continue forever. Eventually, someone would get lucky or desperate enough to strike back, but for now, they had the fear of the galaxy in their grip. What made the Blades truly terrifying wasn't their weapons or stealth, it was the message they carried. That Earth, long underestimated, had learned. It had learned from every betrayal, every invasion in its history, every enemy who thought kindness meant weakness. And now, through these silent warriors, it had chosen a new language, one the galaxy finally understood. On the edge of the rim, a Xarnian diplomat tried to leak footage of a failed Blade operation, hoping to expose Earth's hand. But when he activated the file, it didn't show combat or faces. Instead, it showed a single line of Terran text: "You are being watched. Choose your next move carefully." He disappeared the next day. Across the stars, the question was no longer will Earth respond, but who will be next? Governments scrambled to erase evidence. purge files, even stage public declarations of innocence. But the blades had already marked their path. And once marked, no one was safe. In the dark corridors of command ships and war rooms, fear replaced pride. Enemies spoke Earth's name in hushed tones. But on Earth, there were no parades, no victory. Speeches, just silence. The 100 blades were still moving, and as long as justice remained unfinished, they would not stop. Because Earth had remembered, and Earth had not forgiven. The stars above the neutral system of Kyle Dora pulsed with cold light as the Galactic Council met in emergency session, summoned not by tradition, but by fear. For the first time in history, the council chamber was locked from within, its ancient doors sealed and guarded by automated sentries that answered to no one but the chair itself. The trial of the void, once a symbolic gathering for settling deep disputes between civilizations, had become real and deadly serious. The seats were filled with beings from across the stars, many of them older, wiser, or more powerful than Earth, yet not one delegate spoke loudly. Whispers moved like ghosts. Some looked over their shoulders, others flinched at every shift of shadow. Because the 100 blades were still out there, and though they had never once entered this chamber, their silence was heavier than any voice present. At the center stood High Speaker Varel of the Vayari, his tall silver frame casting sharp reflections beneath the chamber lights. He struck the staff of order, and silence fell deeper. "This meeting," he said, voice echoing, "is called to address the Terran silence, the attacks, and the path forward." None dared call it war, though that's what it was. Not one of the delegates denied that something had gone terribly wrong since Ambassador Rourke's death, but few admitted their part in it. On one side of the Great Ring sat the Zixari, their leader tight-lipped, posture rigid. On the other sat the Krasari, avoiding all eye contact. The trial began with a list of events: the assassination at the Crimson Summit, the mysterious shutdown of dozens of military outposts, the missing warlords, the burning sigils left behind. Each fact echoed louder than the one before. But then came something unexpected. A signal clear calm and unmistakably Terran cut through the chamber's encrypted walls. A hologram blinked to life at the center of the circle, showing Soren Thane dressed in dark formal armor, his face unreadable. The council froze. "We will speak now," Soren said, "because it is time you listened." The room remained still. "You know what was done. You know what was covered up. But we are not here for revenge. We are here for truth." The hologram flickered and shifted, revealing evidence the real kind impossible to fake. Voice recordings of private meetings between Zixari generals and mercenary brokers. Money trails leading from Krasari war councils to off-grid assassins. Sensor logs showing how security was tampered with before Rourke's death. One by one, the lights in the room dimmed as the truth cast its long shadow. There had been a plan to stop Earth's rise, and Elena had paid for it with her life. "This is your trial," Soren's voice continued. "Not ours. We already know what you did. Now the galaxy will know too." With a sharp blink, the hologram shut down, but not before releasing the files to every major data channel in the galaxy. The chamber erupted. Accusations flew, voices rose, and old enemies pointed fingers. The Zixari delegate tried to claim it was misinformation, but even their own aides looked uneasy. The Krasari leader demanded a private investigation, but it was too late. Outside the council, the galaxy boiled. Protests formed on neutral worlds. Former allies of the Zixari began withdrawing from treaties. Merchant fleets refused Krasari contracts. Across dozens of systems, trust collapsed in hours. But inside the chamber, the trial was not yet over. "And what of Earth?" someone asked. "They've attacked without permission. Who speaks for them now?" As if in answer, the great doors to the chamber hissed open, though none had touched them. A group of figures entered, 6 in total, wearing black armor with no insignias, but everyone in the room knew who they were. The 100 blades had arrived, not in stealth, but in silence. They walked to the center of the circle and stopped. Behind them came one more figure, an older man with gray hair, dressed not in armor, but in the same blue suit Elena Rourke once wore. He stepped forward, his voice calm and clear. "I am Dorian Vex," he said. "I speak for Earth." The room held its breath. Dorian's words were sharp, but not angry. "We do not want war. But peace must be honest, or it is nothing. You killed our ambassador and thought we would forget. You tried to silence our voice, so we spoke in the only language you left us, silence and strength." He turned slowly to face the delegates who had been named by the evidence. "You tried to judge us unworthy. But now, you are the ones on trial." No one argued. No one moved. Dorian nodded once to the blades, and they stepped back without a word. "We will return to Earth. But understand this, if you want peace, it must begin with justice. If you want silence, earn our trust. And if you raise your hands again." His voice dropped just slightly. "We will not hesitate." With that, the Terran delegation turned and left the chamber, leaving only silence behind. Outside, the galaxy changed. Treaties were redrawn. The Zixarai Empire fractured from within. The Krasari purged their war council and begged for new negotiations. And Earth, once dismissed as the newcomer, stood taller than ever. Not because of warships or weapons, but because it had reminded the stars that justice still had a name, and that name was humanity. The trial of the void was over. But the echo of Earth's silence would never be forgotten. The galaxy held its breath as Earth returned to the stars, not in fury, but in forceful presence, calm and unshaken. The silence that had once been a warning now shifted into something stronger, something more powerful than fear. It became the voice of Earth. After the trial of the void, when the truth of Ambassador Rourke's murder was laid bare, and the Terran evidence spread across every known data stream, the galaxy could no longer pretend. The 100 blades stopped moving in the dark, but their message remained etched into every power that once mocked Earth. Now, Earth no longer needed to strike to be heard. It only needed to speak. And when it did, everyone listened. At the new Galactic Assembly, rebuilt in orbit above the neutral world of Irius Prime, a special platform was created, sleek, silver, and silent, reserved only for the Terran delegation. For a full week, it remained empty. The galaxy grew tense, unsure if Earth would even attend or if silence would once again be its answer. But on the 8th day, the voice arrived. Dorian Vex stepped into the chamber without guards, without weapons, and without a single escort, dressed in the same blue as Ambassador Rourke had worn. His walk was steady, his eyes calm, and every step echoed louder than any battle cry. Behind him, a single member of the 100 Blades stood like a shadow, not as a threat, but as a reminder. Dorian took the platform, looked at the delegates of 1,000 worlds, and said only 3 words: "We are listening." The silence that followed was heavy. Then, slowly, one by one, species that had once doubted Earth began to speak, not in pride, but in apology, in reflection, and in promises to never again treat silence as weakness. But not everyone welcomed the shift. In the outer reaches of the galactic map, small factions still stirred, angry that Earth had risen so far. They called themselves the Forgotten Flame, made up of warlords, exiles, and bitter commanders who had lost influence since Earth's rise. They believed the trial had been a trick, a show of force dressed as justice. They plotted in secret, gathered old weapons, and sent messages to hidden sympathizers. But Earth was already watching. The 100 Blades had returned to the shadows not to strike, but to observe. And when the Forgotten Flame attempted to assassinate a Terran diplomat on the neutral colony of Mars 4, they found themselves surrounded before they even raised their weapons. None were killed. None were tortured. They were captured, publicly, cleanly, and transported directly to the new galactic court built with Terran help, and guarded by its machines. There, their own words were played back to them, their plans displayed for all to see. No silence this time, only truth, uncovered and spoken aloud. And the galaxy learned something new. Earth was no longer the outsider. It was the balance. The voice of Earth became more than Dorian Vex. It became a movement measured, calm, and unshakable. Earth sent peacekeepers to war-torn zones, rebuilt fallen colonies with AI drones, and opened education stations for species who had once called them primitive. But they did not forget. Every Terran diplomat wore a single silver pin, a small circle with a line through it, the symbol of the Crimson Summit. It was a quiet vow, never again. And through this quiet strength, Earth reshaped the stars. Trade routes were now routed through Terran-patrolled corridors. Peace talks requested Terran mediators. When rogue empires tried to threaten smaller worlds, a single message from Earth was enough to stop fleets from launching. And when questions about why Earth, of all worlds, had earned such respect, those who had seen the silence remembered. They remembered the 100 Blades, who moved without mercy but never without cause. They remembered Soren Thane, who watched the stars without blinking. They remembered Elena Rourke, who died with her head held high, believing in peace. And most of all, they remembered the silence that followed her death, not full of rage, but full of purpose. On Earth, people lived as always under clear skies and stars brighter than ever. But they knew the galaxy now listened. Children learned of the summit in school, not as a tale of tragedy, but of turning. And when they asked why Earth had chosen silence, the answer was simple, because silence can be louder than war. And truth needs no shouting. In the final assembly of the cycle, with all nations gathered once again, Dorian Vex stood one last time and said, "We never wanted power. We wanted peace. But if peace must come through strength, then let strength be just, and let silence speak louder than fear." Then he bowed his head not in surrender, but in memory, and the chamber, filled with species older and grander than humanity, stood in silence with him. No one spoke. They didn't need to. Because now the galaxy understood the voice of Earth. It was not anger. It was not pride. It was the will to protect, the wisdom to act only when needed, and the strength to wait when others rushed. And in that moment, under the soft light of distant stars, 1,000 voices remembered one thing clearly: Earth may have come last to the stars, but it had become the one they listened to first.